The debate on Q&A turned to the question of disposing of nuclear waste, and it was time for Will Shackle to school the politicians again. But first, back to the Liberals' shadow energy minister, ScoMo 2.0. Sorry, I mean Ted O'Brien.
The minister sits on the National Security Committee, the peak body for our strategic defence in this country. He has given commitments to the United States and to the United Kingdom that we can effectively manage high-level nuclear waste. Here he is on national television saying that we can't. That is a serious concern.
And just because you can take... Just very quickly, Will.
I very quickly have a word. I don't think the issue here is the science. The issue here is politics. I think that's really clear. We have the solutions of how to manage spent fuel, high-level waste around the world. And I think it's a shame we're still having these discussions and fear-mongering about high-level waste spent fuel, because I'm sure they wouldn't be having these discussions in France or in all of the other countries around the world which are able to successfully manage nuclear waste. And it's not an issue to them. But for some reason, it is here in Australia. And I think that says a lot about our politics today.
That is gold. It sure does. Will Shackle joins me now. Will, thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know you're in the middle of exams right now.
I am, but thanks for having me on.
Great to have you on. So, Will, you mentioned in that session on Q&A that it's really pointless talking about whether there's a business case or a financial case or not for nuclear, that the government just needs to get on and lift the ban so that the free market, that investors will decide and business will decide whether or not it's viable, right, pretty quickly.
Yeah, the government has no way of knowing how much a nuclear reactor will cost or how long one would actually take to build without having the bans across Australia lifted. Australia is one of the most hostile nations towards nuclear power, so no nuclear power company is going to put all of their time and all of their energy into trying to convince our government when they've made it really, really clear that they don't want it already by having one of the strongest bans across the world in place, not only prohibiting the construction of nuclear power reactors, but in addition to that, prohibiting multiple other stages of the nuclear fuel cycle, such as, managing the waste associated with nuclear power plants, or even refining the uranium in terms of enriching it to make sure that it's suitable for the reactors to be able to fuel the fission process. So the government, if they want to be making the arguments that nuclear energy is too expensive and takes too long to build, then they should put that to the test. And by doing that, that means lifting the bans on nuclear energy, because that's the only way we'll actually know if nuclear power stacks up.
If we had really smart government too, we'd be looking at a broader industry here. Like you say, I mean, Australia's perfectly positioned for safe nuclear, because we've got so much space. We're perfectly positioned to be a great place to process and refine spent nuclear fuel. There's all sorts of opportunities here for Australia, isn't there, in terms of business and growth? But we just lack that vision, don't we?
Well, look, Australia is already a nuclear nation and we are regarded around the world for our nuclear science capabilities. You look to ANSTO and their Lucas Heights facility 30 kilometres away from the Sydney CBD, where we've got a research reactor producing things that are used across the world. We export so many nuclear medicines around the world. We're able to produce silicon, which is needed for even things like renewables. So we're regarded for our nuclear sciences around the world. We've got the largest uranium reserves in the world. We're about to have floating nuclear reactors as part of our AUKUS submarines, which the government is going to be spending hundreds of billions of dollars on. So at that point, they've conceded that nuclear power is safe and that they're willing to actually manage the waste as a result of nuclear power. But so far, the contradiction basically is that they're willing to manage all of that for nuclear reactors based in the water, floating around all of our major cities and everything like that. But they're not comfortable with those nuclear reactors being on land, which is where the debate really emerges. So whilst the government acknowledges the role of nuclear science in, curing people of cancer through nuclear medicines and being used in advanced manufacturing processes with the work that ANSTO does, and in addition to that, using nuclear sciences for the benefit of our national security, they can't seem to realise that nuclear science could also have tremendous applications for our energy security, especially at a time where we're not on track to reach our emissions targets, and it looks increasingly likely that if we follow our current path of 100% renewables, that the lights will inevitably go out. And that's just simply we deserve better as a nation than having energy, being energy insecure. We should, at very, very least, we should have an expectation in this country that regardless of what happens, the lights stay on. And given the government cannot guarantee that, they need to be able to consider all energy options, and therefore they must be considering nuclear power as well.
Now, Will, you care about the environment. Kids your age obviously are very concerned. You've got to live with this future where where these projections are suggesting that we might have a warming planet. What's your take on the wind and solar? I like to call it wind and solar rather than renewables. Renewables sounds a little too nice.
Yep.
They are land-intensive forms of energy, right? What's your take on wind and solar, and what is the appropriate balance, do you think, the appropriate mix that Australia should be looking at, given how much research you've done into this?
Look, first of all, I'm a 17-year-old, so I should not be the one designing Australia's future
Fair
grid.
enough.
I focus
That was a big question.
specifically on trying to lift the bans on nuclear power so we can have an all options on the table approach, which I think is really important. But in terms of what I think in terms of, solar and wind, I think it's inevitable that they will probably still play a leading role in our energy transition, and I think that's a good thing. I think nuclear should complement those solar panels and those wind turbines, but that's not forgetting the fact that no energy source is perfect. Nuclear power is not perfect, and certainly solar and wind is not perfect either. Literally nuclear power is actually safer than wind turbines statistically for one point. Obviously, solar panels, wind turbines have a major effect on the environment and also, displacing people from agricultural lands, even Indigenous communities. So there is that issue in terms of renewables, whether it be with the transmission, extra poles and wires and transmission infrastructure they require, or the direct land footprint required for all of these vast solar farms and wind turbines. That's certainly an issue that needs to be addressed. And I think there needs to be more done to ensure that communities are actually consulted and that these projects aren't at the detriment of those communities. But overall, I think that Australia needs to be considering all clean energy options if we want to have any chance of addressing climate change. And what I would say is, firstly, there's two angles to the environment. First of all, there's the fact that nuclear power is better for the environment from a land footprint and materials usage point of view as compared to fossil fuels, but also solar panels and wind turbines. But in addition to that, it's also one of the cleanest forms of energy in terms of addressing climate change. So if the government wants to be serious about acting on climate change and wants to be serious in reaching net zero, the only guaranteed path to actually do that is when you consider nuclear power. And we've seen that around the world. So not only is nuclear power beneficial for the environment from the land footprint and materials standpoint, but it's also hugely beneficial in addressing climate change.
Will, what is the mood among people your own age now? I mean, obviously millennial-aged older kids are kind of, pretty well one-eyed when it comes to this stuff, if I dare say it. You're seeing a bit of a shift in your age group, are you, with the way kids are viewing the whole energy mix and climate change threat and everything?
Yeah, and I think that was evident in the latest news poll, which showed that 2/3 of my generation actually supported nuclear power. And that's what I'm seeing anecdotally. I think, the thing about young people is that they support the science and they can see the science that nuclear power is a safe, low carbon and energy secure option for Australia. And when they see that evidence presented to them, they're naturally inclined to be supportive of nuclear power. So I think young people are can be some of the strongest champions for nuclear power. That's certainly what I'm trying to do through my campaign, Nuclear for Australia. We've got, now 20,000 people who are behind us and are supporting Nuclear for Australia in what we're doing. So that's excellent, a grassroots impact that we're able to achieve. In terms of the other things in regards to how young people just broadly see the energy debate, I think obviously young people do care a lot about climate change, but the real thing is, and this is what politicians I think have failed to understand, is not only do they want action on climate change, but they actually want politicians to tell them how they're going to actually act to lower emissions. And up until now, I think politicians have taken it for granted, I think they sort of are in a mind space where, if they think that they can just tell young people they'll they'll do everything in their power to address climate change without actually saying to young people the specific solutions that they actually have. And that's what
Good.
young people are really looking for, is solutions to these big issues we face, whether it is climate change, whether it is the energy security issues it looks like Australia will face in the future, even if it's, the cost of living crisis that young people are going to have to inherit with that rising energy bills and all of those issues. So young people want solutions, and when they see a solution like nuclear power, which is both clean, reliable and proven around the world to lower power bills, it's something that, naturally most young people are going to get behind.
Well, Will, I hope that your generation are a little bit more sceptical and demanding of the details, because it's so easy for all sides of an argument to just spin an argument, and you don't really get to the truth unless you do get to the details. We better let you go and get back to your study. What's the plan for Will Shackle after school? You're in Year 12 now. Where are you heading after? Are you going to go to politics?
No, probably not. I think I'll be going to university first and making sure that I get good grades at the end of this year, at end of Year 12 for me. That's probably the priority at the moment, besides from pushing this nuclear power cause and sharing information with people about the potential benefits nuclear power could have in Australia. So I've got a lot on my plate. And like you said, I will actually be studying straight after this one. But yeah, thanks again for having me on.
Absolute pleasure, Will. You can come on the show anytime, absolutely anytime you like. Tell everybody about the website and the petition.
Yep, so if people support nuclear power and specifically support the bans on nuclear power being lifted, I'd encourage them to go to nuclearforaustralia.com/petition or head to one of our pages on social media to find the link there, to sign the petition and to add their name to the tens of thousands of people across Australia calling for the government to lift the bans on nuclear power.
That's Will Shackle. We need more young Australians like him, that's for sure. And any university that's got half a brain, if we have any left in this country, should be chasing this kid down with a scholarship right away. Did you like that content? If you did, there's a lot more where that came from. It comes from a show called The Other Side, and it drops every Friday at 8 p.m. on Australia's ADH.tv, which you can watch for free on any browser. Or you can watch us right here on YouTube. Just remember to please support us by subscribing. Punch that subscribe button and the little bell next to it. Do it now, please.